Hello everyone, good evening and welcome to the webinar on enabling the school ecosystem in the age of virtual education hosted by Denave. My name is Shubhra Sinha and I'm your host for this session. I lead the marketing function at Denave. And it is indeed an honor to have such a lovely bunch of audience with us today. This is our second webinar in this series. In the first one, we focused on the digital transformation of the education sector and the technology influence that is influencing this sector, rather dominating this sector now. And we had an overwhelming response to the first webinar, and we received some feedback, which is what we have incorporated in the second one. We have some participants who are visiting us again, and we would like to thank you and welcome you back to this session. We hope we continue adding value to the knowledge sharing process. Before we jump on to the main agenda of this webinar, let me quickly share an introduction of the wonderful company that I represent, Denave. Denave is a sales enablement company that's been in business for over 21 years now. As a sales catalyst, the company has been working with clients on improving their sales output. So what this primarily means is that we ensure that sales happen, we ensure that economy flourishes, we ensure that people get employed, and more, of course. But that's in the very basic terms about us. Going back to the agenda and moving on, I think in the last 6 months, we have all heard this multiple times, whether it's the parents or the teachers, that schools are shut. We're not sure when they're going to open. We don't know what will happen to the learning process of our children. But yeah, of course, today the schools definitely deserve a pat on their back for ensuring that there is continuity in learning, for ensuring that the process doesn't stop. Their preparedness, of course, has resulted in a spate of online classes, but the job for the principals or the teaching community does not end there. They cannot right now just sit back, because online teaching isn't as easy as a teacher speaking into the microphone and the student listening on the other. It is far more than that. It's just far more collaborative, and there are multiple sets of challenges attached the moment education itself moves into a virtual setting. In this session, those are the areas that we want to address. We have two wonderful speakers with us today who would be delving deeper on what kind of platforms you can leverage, what are the tools available that can make this learning very engaging as well as collaborative between teachers, parents, students, get all the entire community, the entire ecosystem on one pedestal. How leveraging these platforms can help in enhancing the level of communication as well as the overall learning process. Very happy to introduce the esteemed panelists for today: Dr. Shalini Advani, Director, Pathway School, and Ms. Vandana Parasher, Primary Years Coordinator, Pathway School. They've been very kind enough to join us today. Before I request them to say hello to the audience, let me also share a very quick introduction. Dr. Shalini Advani is the founding director of Pathway School, Noida. Previously, she's been principal of the British School, New Delhi, and Director Education of Learn Today. She's advised on the setup of new schools and has conducted multiple teacher trainings till date. She has a special interest in how technology can promote effective learning, and she's extremely focused on the learning process of the children. Thank you, Dr. Advani, for joining us today, and I request you to just say a quick hello to our wonderful audience today.
Thank you very much, Shubhra. It's very good to be here. I'm looking forward to this session. Thank you.
Same here. I also welcome Ms. Vandana Parasher. She has worked as a primary school educator for over 17 years, actually, in international schools from New Delhi to Tokyo. I can only imagine how tough your job would be. So she's also an IB workshop leader and school visitor, and has run workshops for educators around the world in Thailand and South Korea. She believes in constantly engaging herself with research and innovation in technology and education that leads to rethinking and questioning the existing norms. I think very, very important to have that trait and that skill set, especially in the times that we are living today. So very, very glad to have you here, Ms. Vandana. I mean, the audience would love to hear a hello from you too.
Yeah, thank you, Shubhra, for this introduction. And hello, everybody. Good evening. We are really excited to be here and share whatever we have today with all of you.
Wonderful. I'm sure we are all looking forward to hearing the wonderful conversation that's lined up for today. And before we get on to the main agenda, to the amazing bunch of audience we have here, just allow me to take one more minute to guide you through the tool and how to ensure that you get the best and most interactive experience of this webinar. So through the discussion, you might have questions, you might want to ask something to the speakers. There is a hand raise button on your panel as well as a chat window. You can choose any that you like. You can raise your hand, you can put your question on the chat. We would advise you and recommend that you put your questions on the chat. It will help us collate it at the back end and take it up in the designated Q&A slots. If there's something that we can address in the chat window itself, we would love to answer it right there and then. So with that, and without any further ado and without taking any more time, I would like to now jump on to the main agenda. I request Dr. Advani to kindly, take us through her presentation and her thought process, and then we'll take it on from there.
Thank you, Shubhra. It's very good to be here and to be able to share some thought processes with all of you. As Shubhra said at the beginning, schools have been in this online environment for a while. And so the basics is, I think, something that everybody has now got used to managing. And I truly think that schools and teachers have been absolutely heroic in the way that they have managed to do this. What we're going to talk about today is a sort of phase 2 that comes in, which is we've got our basic systems in place, but how do we go on improving the process? I'm sure you, like all of us at Pathways, have found that things that seem to start off well now require new solutions, new ways of retaining interests, new ways of communicating, new ways of collaborating. And that is really what we mean by a whole ecosystem, because this has now become a whole new environment. It's not just the classroom, but there are many, many other features that make up this. So what we're going to do is to share with you our decisions, our experiences at the school that we are both at. So I will be talking for some while and giving you an overview, and then Vandana will take over and take you deeper into some of these areas and add on some others. So when we talk about a school ecosystem, we're talking about many, many decisions being taken by teachers and by principals. So one is this whole process of if you're giving children work from home, how are teachers to see it? How are they to mark it? And then communicate comments or how to improve to the student. It's not just about taking a class, which could be on Microsoft Teams or it could be on Zoom, but it is about all of these other features. The other thing, as we all know, is that parents are now in classes. So how do we get on with the process of sharing in a productive way so that students are helped by parents as well as by the teachers? What is it, the ways in which we can convey to parents what it is that we want their help with? Then there is the whole area of classroom teaching. It's not, or it should not be just the teacher talking. You need to have collaboration, you need to have sharing and discussion among students, because that is the way how good learning happens. And then there is that really important area of assessments. Now, assessments, of course, is a broad area. There are tests and exams, but a teacher is all the time checking in, seeing if students have understood, spending a little time, maybe 5 or 10 minutes in the beginning of a lesson or partway through, to check in on that, to do a quiz, to do a short assessment. What are the best ways in which one can do these informal assessments as well? In a school, you have staff interactions, staff meetings. These days, with so many new areas, it's really important to go on having staff engagements, because with everybody sitting in their own homes, that's the only way you go on sharing ideas and sharing a sense of community. And then, of course, there is the interactions in a larger group with parents, with meeting them, of course, one-to-one PTM meetings, but also gatherings for parents. We feel that it's important to periodically have sessions for parents to keep them involved, because they are seeing what's happening in class, so they might as well get the right information about this. All right, so moving on, let me begin with the basics, which is the sort of platforms that we look at. So for our secondary school class 6 to 12, we use Google Classroom. And the advantage of that is that the teacher can post work on it. Students can upload the work, the assignments that they've written, and the teacher can online mark them, give comments, and give feedback. In the primary school, that doesn't work so well. A lot of the work is visual. Students are doing drawing or doing illustrations. There are many different ways in which they are creating their learning tasks. And you have even more parental interaction. So for that, we have used a platform called SEESAW. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with that. Let me show you one or two of the major features, and then Vandana will come on and give you more examples of this. So just as a brief overview, you can see a piece of work has been uploaded by a student, and the teacher has been able to mark it. They're then able to write a comment down below. A parent is always seeing the progression of their child's work, and you even have space for a parent comment. And that has been something that has been very nice, because it has enabled a genuine two-teacher approach. One teacher is the school teacher, and the other teacher, whether we like it or not, has become parents. And so with all of this, the communication, sharing, visibility aspect of SEESAW is something we found really useful. As I said, Vandana will be talking a little bit more about that. There is this very useful tool called Mentimeter. And on Mentimeter, what it enables is a communication. When you have a large group, for instance, we did this as a staff meeting. So there are various features on this. If you looked at my first staff meeting, I asked my staff, how are you feeling about leading in the new normal? And everybody on their computer or on their phone, you go on to the site menti.com, you put in a code, and you put in the words that you feel. The more number of people that choose a particular word, the larger that word gets. So you can see that more commonly people felt these 4 or 5 words, but there were a whole lot of others. And as people put them in, they keep coming up. So everybody in the audience is able to see what people are feeling. Here's another tool also on menti.com, where I asked them what are the things that are the most important on the first day of school. And there were various options, developing social and emotional comfort, physical safety, responding to parental concerns, ensuring students know how to use the technology. And each person was able to drag and drop in the order that they felt of importance. And as they do it, everybody else can go on seeing which bar is increasing more. So it's a useful and it's a communication device, because in this new normal, that communication aspect has really become very, very important. This is another collaboration tool, one called Jamboard, where the teacher was talking about the role of local government. Students then can put up their little stickies with their ideas, create with these lines informally connections across them. So that is Google Jamboard, very useful for a communicative strategy. Here is one of the ones I'd like to share about assessment, one called Kahoot, good for a very quick assessment, where a teacher will put up a series of questions. For every question, the students choose a single answer, and the teacher goes on seeing who got how many right in the quiz. At the end, you can even put up who came up first, second, third. It doesn't take more than 5-7 minutes in a class, and it creates a lot of excitement. It's a wonderful gamification tool for assessment. Here is another one that's very, very useful and even very important. Online teachers are sharing videos for students to look at. We need to know how much of the video are they engaging with actively in their learning. How much of it are they just watching? How much of it have they watched? How much have they understood? Now, what EDPUZZLE, which is this tool I'm talking about, allows is for you to be able to put up the video, and then at various points, the video automatically pauses and children have to answer questions which the teacher has put on before they continue with the rest of the video. And it also gives you analytics. So it'll give you, who has watched all the video, or like in these first two cases, they haven't watched very much. The teacher immediately gets to know. For each student, they can find out which part of the video did they spend how long on. This gives you the time. So you know that this part, for instance, a student took quite a lot of time watching. Was it that it was more complicated? In which case it's all right. Was it that they had to replay it and they were not able to understand? So it gives the teacher an idea of student understanding of the content that is being shared. Communication with everybody, as I began by saying, is really important. We send out a daily summary of what children have learned, quite simply on a Google Doc. We also send out newsletters every week in the primary school, where they are able to get a summary as parents of what their children have learned. We try and lay it out in an interesting, attractive manner. And finally, we do have events with parents where we are able to talk to them about what has been happening. This is what we had as a form day. As you can see, it was a Zoom. We used Mentimeter, which I was talking about earlier. The teacher was able to talk about what has been happening, show videos of what children have been doing. Parents put up questions in the chat over here. So it was an interactive session, which is really very, very important for the children to get a sense alongside their parents of what is happening in the school. All right, we'll move now to a poll. So I'm going to stop sharing this, and Shubhra, you're going to take over for taking us through that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Advani. This was great information. I think there's so many interactive methods and ways in which overall teaching and the overall learning process can become so interactive and, of course, very collaborative between the school community as well as the parents. So great. So at this point, we'll just, take a small break with a poll, and I'll reach out to the audience to get their views on the topic at hand. I'm just going to be launching the poll. So it should all be, the question should be visible on your screen for our audience on Facebook. They might not be able to see the question, so let me read this out. The question is, what are your biggest challenges for online school? And the options are uploading and doing corrections of work done at home, assessment online, ongoing feedback on whether students have understood, effective community gatherings, like staff meetings, parents meetings, student meetings. Okay, the voting is still ongoing. So we'll give it another 10 to 15 seconds. I think people are still making up their minds. This is a multiple choice question because the idea was not to get the top pain point here, but to understand that overall, where are the sentiments lying? Where are the concern areas? Okay. So we'll give it just another 10 seconds and then we'll close the poll. All right, wonderful. So I'm now closing the poll and sharing the results. It should be on your screens now. So if we see, okay, again for my online audience, they will not be able to see the results. So uploading and doing corrections of work done at home, 43% audience feels that that is one of the biggest challenge. Another 44% thinks assessment online, so equal weightage. Another equal weightage of 43% is going to ongoing feedback on whether students have understood. And then 19% feel that staff meetings, parent meetings, and student meetings are a challenge. Dr. Advani, would you have a view to share over here?
As you can see, it is the day-to-day aspect of teaching and learning that is of the greatest importance rather than the organizational aspect. So yes, so all of these uploading work and assessment of different types, whether it is feedback or whether it is formal assessment, these are the ones that I think schools have to find the right tools. If you have the right tools, these are not so difficult to do. But it is a question of identifying. What we did was we shortlisted 2 or 3 tools that everybody must know. And we did trainings on those 2 or 3 tools. Over and above that, teachers were free to explore other things, and some people came up with other interesting tools. But they should be, just like you have what are the rules for coming in on time in school, etc. There should be a list of 2 or 3 basic things that everybody knows how to do and is comfortable with doing.
Sure. Wonderful. So I think at this point of time, when we are talking about tools, it is absolutely appropriate for me to welcome our next speaker, Ms. Vandana Parasher. She'll be delving deeper in terms of specific tools and platforms you can leverage to make teaching interactive as well as fun. So over to you.
Thank you, Shubhra. And thank you, Dr. Advani, for sharing your vision around developing this ecosystem, which all of us are a part of, and we're also responsible for nurturing it. So I will be diving deeper into the tools, the specifications each of these tools offer, and how do these tools actually enable teachers, parents, and students, and empower them to take on the learning in these challenging times. So I would start off with SEESAW, and to look at it as a digital portfolio platform where it helps all of us to document student learning over time. So for each grade, we have we've got a license, and all the children, their work and their tasks that are assigned to the children, that work gets documented. Now, this work can be accessed even in the later years. So we get a repository of the student learning over time, which any teacher at any point can access. So this builds a portfolio for a child for the entire primary school, the education that they have. Then this is also a very user-friendly platform, because this platform is simple to use. It has, it's even, as young as 3-year-old are able to upload whatever work they're wanting to. They record their voice notes, they upload their pictures, they click, drag, drop. So very simple and easy to use tool, which makes learners feel really good about handling learning themselves and uploading the work. It's an excellent, well-organized platform where tasks can be assigned in subjects-wise folders. So teachers create folders for different subjects and assign work. So it doesn't get mixed up. Students know where to go, where to upload their work. It's accessible by the child, the teacher, the parents. Everybody has access to it, which allows for a great deal of transparency, I would say. So it supports different kinds of file formats. You can upload video tutorials, you can upload task sheets, there are audio files that one can upload, and photographs. So it gives you a range of tools to work with and options through which you can create your tasks online. It helps teachers monitor learning by giving feedback and feed forward to students. It allows for flipped learning. You can upload a video, children can watch it at their own pace and time. So a lot of asynchronous work for us gets transferred to SEESAW. So we know that children have access to it. The parents also get a notification that the work has been assigned. So they also can track and support children wherever it's necessary. And then students work on it, upload their work. Teachers get a hang of where the child is in the learning, gives feedback, comments. Those comments are visible to the parent as well. And then there are times when parents also comment on the child's work. So it maintains a very, I would say, a collaborative approach towards learning. And everybody has access to the work, which, like I said earlier, it makes the entire process very, very transparent. So this is what it looks like. There are a few snapshots that I pulled out. So if you look at the first one here, it's the way the tutorial can be uploaded by the teacher with a very clear lesson objective. Now it becomes important during virtual learning that you state the lesson objective very clearly so that the child understands it, the parent understands it, and the expectations are clearly spelled out. Your success criteria is spelled out very, very clearly. Then the teachers can upload task sheets, the children, and you can choose different features which are inbuilt, and you can see the feedback given here by the teacher, which the child can implement on and incorporate in the next work. And for all different subjects, this works. We've seen different teachers uploading different kind of tasks and work for children to look at. And there are a lot of inbuilt features, like you can upload a graph, you can ask a reflective question, more conceptual questions if you don't want to make it just fact-based. You can ask the children to create trackers. There's an option of creating a choice board. And this last image, we had a session with our teachers where we trained them how to create choice boards on SEESAW. So it's an option for the whole week. You allow children to, okay, this is what you have access to. Now you can click on any of these, and during the week you can complete all 6, up to you. So it allows for a greater sense of ownership to the students when they have choice and when they have access to what all they can do when they have time. The next feature that I'm talking about is the tool is Zoom. Right now we're all on it at this moment, and I'm sure a lot of you must have used it. But yes, there is this whiteboard feature which is inbuilt, which allows for on-the-spot conversations and discussions and thoughts that can be generated and added over here. We use it with teachers, with students. So this exercise was done with the teachers after a unit ended for them. So what did you learn about learning this year? So teachers had to reflect on this virtual learning and what did they learn from this whole exercise. There is this chat feature, which again allows children to add their responses as they are all thinking. Then there is this breakout rooms is a very cool feature, I would say, because it allows a teacher to put children in different rooms for different reasons. One could be differentiation, where you see that, okay, there are differently abled students that I can group them together and assign them a certain task. So those students work together. It also allows for small group interactions. So if you're finding 24 or 30 students hard to manage in a single class, then you put them into breakout rooms and students work in their groups on a collaborative project. So that's how it enables small group interactions, and learning happens over there. Then Dr. Advani has already spoken about these tools, which are interactive and live, on the spot. You can engage students. So it allows for making their thinking visible. So there are a lot of tools like SEESAW, Padlet, Mentimeter, Poll Everywhere, which are live polls, and also Padlet, where you can post a question and children or whoever is accessing, they respond to those questions. So, and they have access to others' responses as well. So it again allows children to read each other's responses and comment on it. Then we always miss this one thing about classroom interaction is discussions. That how do you get children to talk? And through these virtual Zoom sessions or Teams, somewhere we felt always it was restrictive, for all children to talk or share what they felt like, because it's somewhere only highlights few. The moment somebody speaks, only that person's voice is caught by the system. So we started looking at ways to encourage different ideas and thoughts. So there are a lot of tools available which encourage independent thoughts. Collaboratively brainstorming on certain ideas became easier when we started looking at Coggle, Lucid Charts, Mind Map Maker, Jamboard, MindMeister. There are all these mind mapping tools that allow students to share what their thoughts are. Children, even who feel shy or find it hard to speak in front of everybody, even they feel safer. So it creates a sense of safety and allows individuals to share their thoughts. Similarly, there is a lot of focus on students to share their learning. So we've looked at a lot of collaborative tools like Google Slides, Google Docs, which allows multiple students to come on the same platform and work collaboratively. Then Flipgrid is another excellent tool that we have explored and used with children, where the videos can be uploaded and children can see each other's videos and comment on it. You can also track a student's progress because there is inbuilt assessment criteria that can be used. So Flipgrid in totality has a lot of features which a lot of people are not aware of, but if you explore it further, I'm sure you will find it valuable for students to share their learning and for teachers to assess and give feedback to individual child, which can be emailed to them. Canva is again an excellent tool, very friendly, user-friendly. You explore it and you will see there are a lot of inbuilt features in it, which is easy to move around, and it's really nice, bright and colorful. So it allows for a lot of active engagement, I would say. There's a lot of active learning. Children are involved, they're engaged, because through virtual learning, we realize that a lot of them, after a point, get this fatigue from looking at the screen, from listening to somebody. So if the tools are not engaging enough, we lose our audience immediately. So we've looked at different ways of involving children. Even if they're facing the screen, their minds are active and the learning is taking place. And of course, reading for us in real brick mortar setup was really close to our hearts. And we always wanted children to read books, but virtually, again, we felt restricted. So we looked at different ways. So we subscribed to Tumble Books. We also subscribed to a resource called Reading A to Z, which allows us to have access to leveled texts. So it assesses students when the moment they enter, and then a teacher can assign a certain level of a book to the child, which the child can read, and then move to the next one after an assessment. So these are some of the tools that help children to read read for pleasure, as well as there are certain skills that we want to build through reading, and those are all inbuilt into these tools and platforms. I was looking at the poll and a lot of you spoke about assessments. For me, what we have come to think of and realize is you can only assess what you have access to. And during virtual learning and on all these times, this has been one big question, that what we have access to, is this authentic? I cannot access everything. Children have control. They can put us on mute. They can just switch off. So how do I access learning? How do I assess if I don't have access to authentic student data? We have parents sitting there. They help. They support children, and sometimes they go overboard. So what can be done? So we are also in the process of, looking at more ways and strategies. But today I'll share with you what has worked for us. So we've looked at certain ways of on-the-spot assessing students. So Dr. Advani spoke about Kahoot and quizzes. And so quizzes is another tool. If you explore, you will get to see it has also Kahoot-like features, but works a little differently. But yes, it also supports online quizzing. This spotlight feature in Zoom. So when we ask them to demonstrate their thinking, demonstrate their process, that also helps us gauge what the child is working on or is thinking at that moment. And you can clearly see whether the child is on the right track or not. So instead of assessing what they know, we look at tracking their learning. And that's the shift we are bringing in our own thought process, that we can't really grade everything in this process. But yes, what we can definitely do is track students against certain criteria that we have in mind. So those criteria are there definitely, and we look at ways to access learning through these virtual medium. Peer Deck is another tool which is excellent. If you explore it further, you will find that it looks like Google Slides, but a teacher can create kind of conceptual questions through this, assign it to students, and individually children can comment on it and respond to all these questions. And then that again, like analytics teacher gets the entire data, how each child has responded to a set of questions that have been given. Then when we have SEESAW, there are a lot of ways in which teachers post reflections and get the children to think on. So a lot of work goes on SEESAW, and we have our ways of identifying whether the child has authentically worked himself, herself, or has taken parent support, because we ask children to also record an audio explaining how did they come to this solution, what is their strategy, how did they think about it. So questioning as a tool has been really helpful in engaging student levels. So the kind of work that comes on SEESAW also helps us a lot, because children can upload in different ways. So when we are doing a hybrid lesson, a hybrid learning is happening, we ask children to work on the spot in their jotters, in their notebooks, and upload a picture clearly on SEESAW immediately. So we know that instantly the work has happened, and a teacher can virtually also using those tools can correct the work. You can see here in this picture, you can award a star and sticker and check the work and send it back to the child. The criteria once shared with the children, it's easier for them to respond to it. So that makes the process of learning effective, and also the children know what they're being assessed on or what is expected out of them. So when the children upload their work, the teacher looks at it from her criteria point of view and tracks learning. Through Zoom, we have been able to look at our youngest learners, because that's more about observation and less about the information and the knowledge and the concepts that we're looking at. So it's more about looking at the way they're using their hands, their muscles, whether they're using words or vocabulary to describe what they have learned. So all of that can be accessed through Zoom. Again, I'm talking about making learning accessible, because then a teacher can track the child against the milestones that she has in mind for the child. So here she can clearly see how the child is scrubbing or washing, or when she says, okay, now show me an item which is floating, and the child can pick up something and show you. So that's when she's making her assessment on the spot. There are other tools which support work, so which is like Padlet and Wakelet, where we've used it extensively. So students write in the classroom and upload that work and look at each other's, self-reflect on their work against criteria, because that's another important aspect of assessments if we come to think of. The children reflect on their own work and set targets for themselves, set goals for themselves. And that's how we started looking at assessments rather than just a process of grading a child. So our view is now more holistic, considering the fact that we really cannot grade things authentically so much at this point, but whatever we can, we do. And in most cases, we get the children to reflect on where they are as per the set criteria, which was expectations shared initially for a certain task. And once it is uploaded, the teachers give their feedback to the students. So a conversation between the child and the teacher is maintained. And that is also, in a way, formative assessment, informal assessment, where the conversations about what to do next is shared with the child. And here, I've shared a lot of tools. Dr. Advani shared a lot of tools. So we would like you to share which 2 tools you would like to use or you have found useful in your role. And you could share that in the chat right now. Shubhra, how much time are we keeping for this?
I think while they respond, we can move on to
Okay,
the next.
all right, all right. So you all can keep adding the tools in your list that you would like to use or you found useful that you would like to try on.
There are some responses. I think the vote is mostly for Kahoot, Mentimeter, Seesaw, Tumble Books. It's actually now getting a little varied and divided. So
Okay,
yeah, people are
so it can keep going.
they're finding
Yes,
different uses. Yeah, but Kahoot
right.
and Seesaw and Mentimeter, I see a lot of those names coming up.
Right. So you can keep adding. The chat can be alive and active for some time. I move to the other part of it that there's a lot of artwork that children do during these times, and because art has been so therapeutic, so we did not want to leave this opportunity, and we wanted to celebrate all the work that children had done during these times. So in school we always had this annual art exhibition, and we thought that it's important for our community to get a sense of the kind of work that is happening, and not move away from this exhibition aspect of student learning, of celebration of student work and learning. So we looked at this tool, which is Exhibit app with a double B. Um, and it's a very reasonably priced, I would say. You get the space, you get an actual room, virtual room, and you can set it up the way you want with all the student work. So we use this platform to create a virtual exhibition, a virtual tour for our parents and students, and parents really felt proud of seeing this initiative. And also as teachers, we were really thrilled to celebrate all the work that had happened during the lockdown period in the first semester. Um, so I would like to come back to the whole idea of ecosystem and how it's important to understand the role of parents and families and what they're going through these times, and how as an organization, as a community of educators, how can we take that into account, into consideration, that parents are going to be there. The learning is happening from home. So understand and acknowledge and celebrate the fact that we are working with the families and not with individual students. So we looked at a lot of opportunities to involve parents, and we created tasks around that where the parents were also involved. So I'll share one short video, which is round singing. Our music teachers assigned this task, and which involved parents to sing along with the children. And this is barely like 2 minutes long. So watch this and then we'll go to the other side. Now. Row, row your boat gently down the stream. Row your boat gently down the stream. Row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is just a dream.
Row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream.
Merrily, 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 life is but a
dream.
dream.
Row your boat gently down the stream. Merry, merry, merry.
Merrily, 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 life is but a dream.
Gently down the stream.
Gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream.
1, 2, 3, start.
Row, row, row your boat. Row, row your boat. Merry, 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 merry. Life is but a dream. Life is but a dream.
You can see that how whole family got together. The families really appreciated these efforts, and not just with music. We looked at a lot of collaborative work with family members, and it was received really well because then parents understood their role, that there is only that much they can do, and most of it has to be actually done by the child. So it really helped us in clarifying a lot of expectations and also involved them as equal contributors and equal partners in education. So I think this brings us to the end, and I hand over to Shubhra. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think I wish I have a chance to go back to school life, because this looks like school's a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, and looks like it is still a lot of fun, thanks to all the efforts from the teachers and the school community. At this juncture, I would now like to, go to the audience. I would also request Dr. Advani to kindly switch on her camera. We will just take questions from the audience, and let's see how much time we'll have to respond to all of them. So the first question is actually a mix from two people, and one is from Tapsi Pramanik. So if I have to, and both the questions are of the same flavor, so I'm mixing them up. Mainly the question is that, are these tools and these platforms, are they going to become the new norm of teaching, even when, life goes back to normal, and, the virtual setup finally goes away and we go back to the classroom setup, hopefully one day, very soon. But will these continue being a part and parcel of what we are doing?
If I start off by responding to that, one is that I think that anybody who's involved with education knows that there's been a problem in terms of the way children have been learning, in terms of what we've been driving. We found that it is hard to pay attention to different levels of children when you have, say, 40 children in a class. How are you to do that? How do you get enough children to answer or to respond? Now, one of the things that these tools have really brought to the forefront is how you can have good teaching practice. And we all know that good teaching practice is giving confidence and voice and paying enough attention to children. So what it is enabled is perforce, whether we wanted to or not, is to have learned how to do that. And I think to that extent, many of these tools are going to become a part of regular teaching practice. At least I hope they do, because they've actually freed us from some of the standard problems that you have in a classroom with large classes. I don't think schools will ever go back to being the same as they were. I hope not, because I think this has in many ways been a leap forward.
Okay, well answered. I will now like to take a hand raise. So we have a hand raise from Anuradha Goyal. Anuradha, I am now unmuting you from my end. You're self-muted. Would you want to take your question? Anuradha Goyal, are you there? You're self-muted. Okay, so moving to the next hand raise, we have a hand raise from AB Nayak. I have unmuted you. Do you have a question to ask, Mr. AB Nayak? I don't know if that's a Mr. or Miss. Okay, so now I will move on to the chat window. There are a lot of questions actually coming up. Okay, very interesting question that I'm seeing now is from Rajiv Purkayastha. Sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, big apologies. The question is, how do we address the issue of digital divide across the country? And I think this is a question that others are also asking in different ways, but in terms of these tools, these platforms are obviously dependent on the infra, the internet connectivity and all of that. So what do those people do who do not have access to that?
So there are, I think, many levels of digital divide. And we have to be sure about what kind of digital divide we're talking about. So one is where you have people who have computers, who have internet access, but the bandwidth is not great. There is a different level, and this is true of much of rural India, where even access to devices is limited, where it is a smartphone, for instance. And some people at the bottom end of that don't even have that. So obviously, something which involves varied tools is going to require a certain device. There are certain tools which work perfectly well from a smartphone. Mentimeter is one, for instance. It is also possible for children to take photographs of work and upload it onto SEESAW. But there is also, in some cases, a financial divide. Many of the tools that we have shared are free, or some version of these tools is free. So, SEESAW, for instance, at a base level, is free. It's when you go to a premium one, which allows for a larger number of possibilities, that you have to pay. I think you pay about 450 rupees a year per child, which is a reasonable amount for a number of schools. So I know that many schools would not be able to afford that, but many might look at that. But even if they don't, the free aspect of it is something that can be used. If you're in an area which really does not have internet access, which we know people in certain areas don't even have electricity for certain hours of the day, then yes, these tools are going to create a problem. But for those levels of students, just to get basic content across is in itself a huge challenge, never mind the other aspects of student-led learning. So it's not a very satisfactory reply I'm giving. I'm saying, yes, there is a divide. But I think our intention in sharing this is that there are many schools across this country who do have sufficient bandwidth for accessing. If you can access Google, you can access any of these tools. So it's really about those schools rather than the ones that fall outside that.
That's wonderful to know, and I'm sure great information for the audience here. Okay, I see a very interesting question from Ms. Shivani Giri. She's asking, how do we teach the senior students academic honesty and prevent plagiarism? Now, which tool will help us do that?
In fact, there is a tool which does that. There's a tool called Turnitin. So and we have that, we use that in our school. A student has to upload any long piece of work, and this is really a senior school question, any long essay through Turnitin, and it highlights anything which has been uploaded anywhere, any part of an essay, a Google site, anything like that immediately gets highlighted. So yes, you do have apps very much for academic honesty.
Great. Okay, I see another hand raise, and I'm again giving it a shot. Vijay Lakshmi, I see a hand raise from you, and I have unmuted you from my end. You're self-muted. Do you have a question?
Hi, ma'am. Good evening, all. Especially, I would like to speak with Vandana, ma'am. Can I, ma'am?
Yes.
Yeah, Vandana, ma'am, I'm very much impressed as you have told about first to fifth grade, especially for the primary students. And in our school, we are facing problem for the first to third grade students related to the handwriting session. So how can you give me any kind of suggestion to improve the handwriting of the children? Because most of the parents, mostly not 80 or 60, almost 100% of the parents had a question that how can we improve the handwriting without your presence? If you give an answer so that it will be helpful for me to implement in our school also. Thank you, ma'am.
So I'll share with you because this concern.
Sorry, ma'am, before you answer that, looks like Ms. Vijay Lakshmi read my mind. Please tell me.
Yeah, we came across this question even from our parent fraternity, where they said that, it's everything is becoming so digital and children are typing. What happened to handwriting? And we realized that handwriting then comes down to formations. And because you're talking about grade 1 to 3, so we said that, okay, for grades 1, we would have a letter formation exercises as tutorials for children who really want to follow how to write, because children have to ultimately be writing themselves. And then we said, okay, then once the children have done it, practiced it, we sent out certain, sheets that they could print at home or work with, and then upload it. But I think that's what we have tried and has worked.
If I can just add to that, the other thing that we've done, because not everybody has printers, is we ourselves have created these worksheets,
yeah,
and told parents come and pick them up. So we, every week or 10 days or 2 weeks, parents will come and pick up a little booklet of practice sheets, which they then take home. And then the children work on those. They can take a photograph of that and then send it to the teacher.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for the suggestion.
Lakshmi, thanks for the question. I think every parent will relate to that. Okay, I think we have a few more minutes to take a couple of more, 1 or 2 more questions. So I think I'll take a question from Sheetal Handesh. She's posted in the Q&A panel. She's asking what should be a typical timing of each class in the virtual environment, and typically how many subjects should be taken up in a day?
Vandana, do you want to take that?
Yeah, so we have looked at, after a lot of deliberation and what would work best, what is the best fit, we have looked at a 45 minutes lesson, and not more than 5 lessons in a day. So we start at 8:30, and we give, after every lesson, we give a break for, let's say, about 10-15 minutes to students, and then only we start with the next lesson. We also look at a balance between synchronous and asynchronous sessions. So synchronous sessions are happening like we are talking right now on Zoom, the live classes that happen, and then we avoid having successive synchronous classes. So we try and break it with an asynchronous task after having a synchronous class with the teacher. So then that asynchronous work would be assigned on SEESAW, or that would be a jotter work in the notebook that has to be done and then uploaded on SEESAW. So then the children are not then in front of the screen, but then working independently. And then we have another sync class. So the timings and everything, the daily breakup is sent out to parents and students so that they have access to the whole day's plan. So 5 lessons, a balance of synchronous and asynchronous, not more than 3 synchronous classes in a day, and 2 asynchronous tasks which can be done independently and uploaded, and breaks in between. So that there, even if because sometimes timetable issues do crop up, and we can't really separate synchronous and the next successive class, so we have to have 2 synchronous lessons. But then, because that 15 minutes break is there in between for children to take a break, stretch themselves, get back, take a break from screen, that helps. So that's how we have divided.
And of course, for the youngest children, we often have it even shorter. We might have a 30-minute class, if that is adequate. So it varies depending on what it is that is the activity that is being done. And for the younger children, we have 2.5 hours in the day.
Okay. So at this time, I will probably stop the Q&A session, but I'm seeing a lot of positive comments in the chat window. Makes us very, very happy to read that a lot of you have written in terms of the information has been helpful. Some of the questions have been unanswered, but I think they've been answered at some point of time in this webinar, in terms of tools, in terms of what happens if the internet connection is not there, what happens if digitally a certain place is not as advanced as metros, and things like that. So I think we have addressed that at some juncture, some point, and the way to access that information is that you could visit Danave's Facebook page. There is this entire webinar is being live streamed and you can access it there. It will also be uploaded on our YouTube channel shortly. The link will also be shared with all of you. And if you want to forward it to your colleagues, if you want to share it with anyone, please do. It will make us even happier. Thank you everyone for your time today. Thank you, Dr. Advani and Ms. Vandana Parasher to join us today and share all this amazing bunch of information with us. As a parent myself, but I'm sure for the teaching community here, this was a lot of wonderful information to have in terms of how we can ease up the entire virtual learning and, you know, remove this tension around this scenario and make it more fun and more collaborative and more interesting. So again, you know, like last time I said, 1 hour of full learning, full fun, full interaction, and I think totally 1 hour well spent on this webinar. Thank you to the audience for sticking by, for being so interactive, for posting such amazing questions, for participating in the poll, for participating in the questions, and we encourage you to share your feedback with us. We have an ID called webinar@denave.com. I'm repeating, webinar@denave.com. If you have any further questions that you would want us to pass on to the speakers, or something that you want to comment in terms of, anything that you want to hear from us in future, you can write to us on this ID and we'll be very, very happy to, take your feedback. Like I said, this is being live telecasted on our Facebook channel, also will be uploaded on our YouTube channel. So you can visit our page anytime and go through the content. And thank you. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay safe, stay home, and enjoy yourselves. Thank you, Dr. Advani. Thank you, Ms. Vandana.